Hi everyone. It's been a while, but not for lack of wanting to make a video for the second channel. The last half a year has largely been about discovering what creation and productivity means for me and figuring out ways to optimize it. And if you watched the video on my main channel about creative burnout, I identified why I and other people with attention deficit problems often have trouble finishing problems or even outputting things, even though they have this kind of compulsion to create. And I figured out why that was the case for me, but understanding why isn't the same as fixing the problem. So that's what I've been doing. I've been taking little steps to fix problems, and this comes in a variety of forms. So for example, I noticed that there needs to be a reason for something to exist past just personal interest to subvert the guilt of making something that doesn't bring in money. So that's why the casual sponsorship system was created, because even if it's not much money, just the fact that some money exists for any video I could make gives random videos a chance to exist. So when I wanted to make fun, free-form videos, just banter type things with other creators, I've always thought, actually I should be working on products instead. But now that guilt is subverted because the casual sponsor system exists. Another system created for a solution is the physical merch store. It's a long-term project. I wanted to do some physical things that I could sell to people, but even not just that, things like if I do art challenges or do them in a bigger way in the future, I can make awards for people and send that to them. So it's this more kind of fun interaction thing. But wanting to do projects like that comes with the guilt of, actually, I'm not doing a Blender related thing specifically while I'm working on physical stuff. And is there any real point to working on physical artwork that isn't Blender related because, well, it doesn't help the business in any way? Well, now there's a physical store. It gives it a reason to exist. So again, the last half year or so has been putting other things aside to build systems which solve problems in my workflow. So that's why there's been silence in the courtroom, silence in this channel. That's why podcasts stopped. And that's actually not the only reason. Moving to this rental, which is a middle position between the old place and the new house. It's being renovated with the new studio. This had awful internet for a while as well. So that kind of slowed things down. I had more podcasts booked with people, and then we decided, well, actually it wasn't really going to work because the internet wouldn't be able to keep up with that. And also uploading videos became slower because even though we improved the internet here, it's still not that great, especially for upload speed. So I have to walk down a hill to go to my grandparents' house to upload videos and then come back up the hill. So being able to fast fire out content was no longer a viable thing to do. But that's also interesting because when you are given limitations in a way, new limitations, you have to innovate around that. I have actually, something I've only really admitted to a couple of people, this year my income is about halved from last year. But that's actually not too strange because what I've heard from a lot of other creators, especially product creators, and I'm not just a product creator, I do other things, but I quite like that because I can kind of move in between different fields. But when speaking to product creators, that's something consistent, that given the economic situation, income has dropped for everyone this year. But again, I've managed to subvert that because I have the privilege of choice. I can choose to work on different things to generate different sources of income. If I want to make more money, I'll do a product or a product update. Affiliates are also there, but they've been less reliable. And that's a whole other video in and of itself. I've made changes to that policy, and those changes have been good. They have worked. And that's also made way for the casual sponsor system, which is also a new source of income. So I've been listening to the times. I've been listening to the people, the other creators, seeing what works, what doesn't work for them, slightly adjusting my process as we go, combining that with my discoveries of productivity, how my brain works when it comes to project management, putting all these things together and adjusting my position so that I will be more stable in the future. I've been future-proofing. That's a way to put it. I have been investing a lot of time this year in future-proofing the channel, but that means that there has been some silence. But now I think it's a good time to put some of these philosophies to the test. So one philosophy I have for work is speculative pool creation. What do I mean by that? This is something you can take away as well if you're trying to improve your content output, if you're a creator. So instead of thinking of something and making it, employing the thing I discovered during my creative burnout video on the main channel, where I found out that the most effective way to capture your creativity and your productivity as an attention deficit creator is to, instead of give yourself objective things to create, do this, do this, do this, which can be helpful for people that are looking for a structure, on your day-to-day life. You wake up, you don't know what to do, follow a checklist. That can be helpful. But rule one, all things within reason, you need to understand that you are a creative being and your inspiration is going to be ephemeral. It will come and go. It will appear out of nowhere. You should see yourself maybe sometimes as a sun, as a star, a energy generator curation device, if you like, where instead of trying to tell it what to do, you're instead going to try and capture that energy in more effective ways. So when inspiration strikes, you have a policy for what to do with it. So that's quite a nice mental image. You are like this big kind of fusion ball emitting tons of energy, and most people's energy is just like goes out and dissipates and isn't really done much with. But you, as a content producer, is you need to identify yourself as this thing, which shouldn't be overly controlled. You don't want to restrict freedom. That's just a general policy for life. I don't think people's freedom should be restricted. And you want to design a Dyson sphere around yourself, essentially. That's what policies are for. Policies, content policies I call them, or checklists, just things which you can observe and improve over time to say, hey, when I feel the desire to create an artwork, here are all the things I can do with it to capture that energy, if you like. Here are all the places I can put it on social media. Here are the different content pools I can put it in so I can pick up later. What do I mean by a content pool? Well, this is a technique I came up with to try and help with improving projects which require a large amount of research, for example, community roundup videos. Again, I need to put this to the test a bit more, but the idea is that if I'm scrolling through Twitter, a lot of people waste their time looking through Twitter finding cool things. But when you find something cool, that is a moment of poof, energy ejecting from a star. So you go, okay, I found something cool, let me add it to this pool. So you have a list, like a list you create for like a type of video or a newsletter or something like that. The idea is to do that there and then in the moment, to capture that moment of inspiration, put it in the right place. Because some people make a mental note and they go, oh, I like that, I'll make a mental note to do it later, but they don't. So you want to make these things as efficient as possible. I found something cool on Twitter, put it here. Instagram, put it here. Blender Nation, put it here. You also want to make a note not to over design things in the way that a lot of people feel like when they're making videos about things they've been inspired by, they need to script everything. And I found that scripting is, again, kind of inhibiting of this. It's just another thing which creates a mental bookmark that says, hey, you need to invest time into doing this. So I don't really script anything anymore. I also find that when I make notes about things I want to talk about, so for example, with this video, where we're kind of self-reporting on things which are going on, I start by like reading the first 2 words and then I just go off on a complete tangent and it's useless. So actually, investing time in writing something doesn't always work out. I've also learned kind of to trust the freedom of the process. So for example, the last video I did on my main channel at the time of making this was the first casual sponsorship video, another way to model in Blender, a new way to model in Blender rather, talking about the SDF modeling add-on being developed, Conjure SDF, and explaining all the differences between signed distance fields, SDFs, and other modeling methods. That video was not scripted. It's quite a good video. It did pretty well. It's the best performing video of the year. I think it's coming up to like, it's 30 to 40,000 views in a few days. And it surprised people when I said the video wasn't scripted. All I did was, I was getting worried that I hadn't made a video in a while. I had a variety of videos I could make, variety of ideas. I chose that one because I just done a short about it. I sat down in this chair, span around a bit, looked at different things on my tables I could use to gesticulate and explain the topic, and then just sat down and recorded it right there and then. And again, that turned out to be one of the best performing videos of the year. So that's kind of trusting in the process of freedom, rather than kind of over designing things and over planning, which largely comes out of fear for performance. Just, hey, this is you being a sun, ejecting some energy. I'm in an environment which captures that well, and then I have policies to maximize that. So again, the policies come in the way of, how do you post it on social media? How do you create the thumbnails? Do you have a process or a formula for making titles and stuff? So that's just a demonstration of capturing a moment of freedom. And this also comes back to something I describe as, I have this view of the world where life is a series of expansions and compressions. It gets a little bit weird because I don't really believe in entropy as such. This goes way back to some other projects I've done. I believe that we can see the world in 2 forms, or like 2 pillars rather, as complexity and unity. And you can think about them as expansion and compression, where if things only complexify, then you effectively go from a completely homogeneous state to complete noise, and there is no binding element in between. So for me, the universe would essentially just go from a big bang to noise and nothing. Zero complexity to maximum complexity. So I also believe in unity, as I call it, which is where as things complexify, they also unify. It's like a kind of anti-force, a binding. Well, it's not really an anti-force because then things would just like try and come back into as they were and they'd get stuck in a stable state. So unity for me is as the complexity grows, links are drawn between the complexity. So that's why you get things like entities in the universe. It's just a bit of like a kind of, pseudo-philosophical thing, but I believe it applies to everything, including creativity and productivity. So I remember speaking about this with Joshua Kanauber in a podcast episode on this channel, that a lot of the time when it comes to creative exploration and building tools, you will try lots of different things and it will get very messy. And that comes back to my creativity over efficiency policy, where if you're coding, don't focus on making efficient code from the very beginning. Keep things open and expanded so that when you come back to them in the future, you can read it. Readability for me is more important than efficiency. You don't want to be compressing everything into really condensed formulas because then it's hard to expand them again and work on them. So I keep things in this kind of expanded process process, but then as things need to be made efficient in the future, or as you settle down on good techniques to do things, then you compress them again. Same thing with the product table. This changes like every time. Like every video you watch on the main channel, almost everyone, the background will change because I've been trying different techniques for making physical products. It gets messy. And then as useful things become apparent, like this drill press, we compress the space down again. And that also effectively makes it tidy. So what you're doing over time, even though the amount of space stays the same, the usefulness of the space increases. It is capable of doing more things because in your process of trying different things, making things messy, you compress the useful parts back down and then the space becomes more capable. So you'll try more things, make it more messy, compress the usefulness down, and then it becomes even more capable. I also have that perspective about like workflow tools like Notion, because we will expand things with tons of tasks to do, and then a good thing to do is kind of compress all those tasks down into just a few useful or like the most useful elements. We can make really complex pages explaining our policies, and then we compress them down into the most useful elements. So again, you're kind of maximizing the use of a space. Ideation, compression, and that over time that space becomes really, really useful to you. So again, that's something I've been exercising this year, this element of expansion, compression in trying to identify my creative workflow. How do I maximize myself as a creative? So where does this channel fit into this? Well, as you know, this channel is called Kurt Studio, and Kurt Studio doesn't really exist yet. In about June 2024, we're expected to finish the renovations on the new house, including the new studio. And the idea kind of all along was really to have this channel as the more cognitive zone, where I could report on the things I'm doing and just discuss the things I'm thinking about. So we would have a record and people might find that interesting or inspiring. But because Kurt Studio doesn't actually exist yet, this place has kind of been a little bit random and scatterbrained. What I would like to try and do is start moving it into the right place. So again, applying some of the concepts I've been coming up with this year, testing some of these workflow methods, and turning this into what it should be as a conversational and reporting structure for projects. Trying to do that in a way that's also entertaining for people is a challenge that I think is something I'd like to, I don't know, try my hand at. So that's what we'll do. In between the other main projects, I'll give this a little bit of time just to try and nudge it into the right space, to turn it into, you know, Kurt's Studio channel rather than Kurt's Random BS channel. Okay, so that log covers number 1, 2, and 3 for my list. If you made it to the end of this log, put a dog emoji in the comments so I can see who you are. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.